You're listening to The Stephen Torriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Stephen Torriello Show. And now, here's Stephen.
For the people criticizing Donald Trump for going to the Arlington Cemetery ceremony, maybe people should be asking themselves the question, why wasn't Kamala Harris or Joe Biden there? That's what we're going to get to the bottom of. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in, and we have a whole lot to get into, especially when it comes to this topic. I want the theme of today's show to be about the Afghanistan withdrawal disaster overseen by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and the media's kind of strategy to distract from that disaster and try and put it all on Donald Trump. And so I got some videos we're going to look at. Some Tom Cotton did a Meet the Press interview with bootlicker Kristen Welker and absolutely wrecks her. And it is fabulous. I also want to get into a video of the mother-in-law, Christy Shamblin, of one of the soldiers that died in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's Afghanistan disaster. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, should be the exact reason why these people should be as far away from the White House as possible. And it's not just that. That was the first mistake that was made. But it was one disaster after another after another. The Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration has been a human pandemic for this country. And I think it's time that people start holding them accountable. And it's not going to change with the Kamala administration. It's going to be worse. It's not going to get better. It's not going to stay the same. It's going to get worse. There's no accountability. Nobody was even fired for the Afghanistan disaster. I don't even think anybody got scolded. And so the problem is exactly what Christy Shamblin, the mother-in-law, talks about at the end of this video. It's kind of a long video. It's about 5 minutes, but it's worth every single second. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into that. This is Christy Shamblin, the mother-in-law of one of the daughters that was in Afghanistan during the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris Afghanistan withdrawal debacle. Here, check this out.
Former President Trump published a statement on Truth Social from 5 family members thanking him for making the visit and saying, "We are deeply grateful to the president for taking the time to honor our children and for standing alongside us in our grief, offering his unwavering support during such a difficult time." Joining me now is one of those family members, Christy Shamblin, mother-in-law of Marine Corps Sergeant Nicole G. G, aged 23, was deployed to Afghanistan, where she served as a female engagement team member to help facilitate evacuation support for Afghan women and children. She was killed in a suicide attack along with 12 other service members that day, leaving behind a husband. Christy, thank you so much for being here. Please tell me about Nicole.
Oh, thank you for having me. Nicole was a ray of light. She was an encourager. She believed in having a positive mental attitude, and she was so very proud to be serving on with the FET team in Afghanistan. She was very, very proud to serve there, and they all worked so hard to get the most vulnerable out of that country before, certain death. And we're very proud of her. And we want to continue on her legacy and being encouraging and having a positive mental attitude.
I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm trying to understand
Sure
what exactly went on Monday. You wanted the former president there. By the way, I think it's a wonderful thing that he was there, reflective and honoring our war dead. But it crossed a line at some point. How do you see it?
Well, first I want to remind everybody.
They want so bad for this woman, Christy Shamblin, to come out and just scold Donald Trump. They want it so, so bad. And my guess is that they reached out to every single one of the family members that were there that day to try and find one of them, just one, to say something negative about Donald Trump. I guarantee you, they went to every single person that was there to try and find just one person to say something negative about Donald Trump that day, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it, so they got this woman, and by the looks of it, they're not really sure what she's going to say. That's just my opinion. That's my observation. I don't think this guy knows what she's going to say. I don't think this was pre-questioned. I don't think this was pre-organized or anything. I think he is hoping, and he's trying to squeeze out of her something negative that they can put on the headlines about Donald Trump going to that ceremony. Anyways, here we go.
Buddy, that it's really hard to find a way on August 26th to celebrate, and we want to celebrate our heroes. We invited both President Trump and the Biden-Harris administration, and we didn't hear back from the White House. We were happy to welcome President Trump to lay wreaths with all three of our families and our wounded, some of our wounded from that day. And when he came to Section 60, it was at our request to spend time with our loved ones. There was not a press presence there. We privately took pictures among ourselves. And it was, a more celebratory feeling for that day because, we want to celebrate our loved ones. And it's very hard to find ways to do that at a cemetery. But they were very respectful. We didn't see any altercation. And really, we just want our loved ones to be honored and remembered in a positive way.
So I hear and respect all of that.
No, you don't.
At the same time, I have to say he should not have used the video that was recorded in TikTok for a campaign purpose. Can we agree on that?
These people are so consumed with TDS, man.
I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know what it is. But there's no political campaigning that was done at Section 60 that day.
Right.
It was a respectful time.
I'm showing what was put on TikTok so that the audience can see it. And I recognize you might not be able to see it. We didn't lose one person in 18 months, says the narration. And then they took over that disaster,
True.
The leaving of Afghanistan. We lost 13
True.
great people. I mean, it's got a message of saying, I did right by our soldiers, and Biden and Harris did not. I mean,
See what they're trying to do here, folks? This is what they do all the time. They try and take something and twist it into a narrative that fits their desired outcome. So what they want is Donald Trump to have broken the law. They want him to be charged. They want him to be prosecuted by the Department of Justice for going in and taking video footage of Section 60 of Arlington Cemetery at the request of the parents of the slain soldiers that were there. And they want to twist that to get negative headlines of Donald Trump, and they just can't do it. But they do this all the time with everything. So Donald Trump takes the footage. He posted on TikTok to show the American people that if he was president, this wouldn't have happened. To show the American people that he actually went. Does anybody actually think that if the shoes were on the other foot and Kamala Harris went there and took video footage and took pictures with the family, because she was invited, by the way, does anybody think that there would be this huge ordeal? There would be this incident of Kamala Harris breaking the law for campaigning in Arlington Cemetery? No. I'm so sick of the double standards, man. It is so ridiculous that they're going to try and take this incident, a day that should have been a day of mourning so that these parents can grieve, and they wanted Donald Trump there, and to try and turn it into exactly what they're accusing Donald Trump of doing, turn it into a campaign hit piece for Kamala Harris. Because we all know the left-wing media like CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, they're in the bag for Democrats. They are Democrat media. They are state-run media to try and get Kamala Harris across the finish line. So far away from the original framers' intentions for a press, a free press. This is not free press. This is a campaigning tool for Democrats. And they always try and take something little and turn it into something big to try and kneecap Donald Trump with. It's sick, man. I know you are too. I'm just so sick of it, man. It is disgusting. It's disgraceful. And they'll never stop. These people have been doing this for a decade. Think about that. A decade, since 2015. They have been taking Donald Trump's sentences out of context. They try and bend everything to make it look negative towards Donald Trump. They do everything they can to manipulate the people, to gaslight them, to lie to them, to try and create this alternate narrative, to create a narrative. They try and build a narrative to try and attack Donald Trump. It is not at all what our press is designed to do. It's not the purpose of the press. And like I said, we're just so far off from what the press's original job is, from what the press's job is supposed to be, which is to tell the damn truth, man. That's it. Not to try and get your political candidate across the finish line, but to tell the damn truth. If not for this reason and this reason alone, Kamala Harris nor Joe Biden should be anywhere near the freaking White House, man. And people seen that, and they seen that as a sign of weakness. And all the rest of the crap started happening. And so there's more of this video. I want to go ahead and finish it up here.
Former President Trump published a statement on Truth.
Let's try and find it here.
Well, you know, I just have to go back to, we really just want our
great.
kids to be remembered and honored. And it's unfortunate that we can't get that, you know, in other ways.
Because the media are a bunch of scumbags.
So
That's why.
we support President Trump, and he's supported us.
Boom.
A final question, if I might. Do you worry that the issue, the legitimate issue of the way in which we left Afghanistan and the circumstances 3 years ago at Abbey Gate now sort of diminishes as an issue, because when people think of Afghanistan, the withdrawal, it'll be the controversy over Arlington instead of a very appropriate focus on the death of those 13? Final thought on that?
I think our media needs to do a better job of focusing on the Afghanistan withdrawal instead of things like this that aren't really relevant or important. I mean,
Wow.
we were very respectful. I understand that there may have been, you know, a little bit of a misunderstanding, but we'd like to take the focus back to, just like you said, let's talk about how we left all the equipment behind. Let's talk about the Americans and the Afghans we left behind. Let's talk about the people we brought over that weren't vetted. Let's talk about the wounded. And that's what we want to bring focus back to. I appreciate that, because that's exactly what we want.
Wow.
You know, the American people to focus on. We want our armed service members to be safer. We will have another evacuation. And if we don't start to focus on how to fix this, it will end in more casualties, and that's unacceptable.
The media has not talked about the Afghanistan withdrawal almost at all. It's almost not, it was like a situation that the media has been wanting to just bury for 3.5 years. They do not want to talk about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's Afghanistan disaster because they are a bunch of lying frauds. That's why. Nobody was held accountable for that freaking disaster. The media, it's like I said, talked about it for one day. And the entire time they were trying to figure out a way to flip it on Donald Trump. And this is where you got that narrative. Oh, Donald Trump orchestrated the deal with the Taliban. Now, does anybody actually think that Donald Trump would have pulled the soldiers out before securing that airport and getting the civilians out of there? Absolutely not. Why? Because Donald Trump has common sense. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were too worried about having a political campaign ad to get a win so that they can celebrate the anniversary of 9/11, that they changed the date against the recommendations of Joe Biden's military staff. They told him, do not do this. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did it anyways. And why do I say Kamala Harris? You might be saying, oh yeah, but Joe Biden did this, not Kamala Harris. They're not going to get out of this that easy, because we all know, well, if we don't know, Axios wrote a piece talking about how Kamala Harris was the last person in the room when it came to the Afghanistan withdrawal. So I know the Kamala Harris campaign wants to try and get away with that, but this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to take credit for all of the successes, which are none, of the Biden administration and none of the failures. And it's almost impossible. So Kamala Harris wants to be an incumbent and take credit for, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act, which actually increased inflation, the insulin prices, all the crap that they tell their constituents now. But she doesn't want to be held accountable for any of the failures. So they're trying to disconnect her from the failures and then try and promote her for the successes of the Biden administration. And I'm sorry, it's just not going to work. People aren't dumb, man. This should be so insulting to the American people that the Kamala Harris campaign and Democrats as a whole think people are so dumb. They think people aren't paying attention, and this is the biggest problem Kamala Harris has, is that she is too phony. She is a fake, phony fraud. And the fact that the media, here we are 3.5 years later, still trying to pit the blame on Donald Trump for the Afghanistan withdrawal. And they know they can't pit the blame on him for the actual withdrawal, but now they're trying to drum up a narrative about Donald Trump broke the law by taking footage from the Section 60 of Arlington Cemetery and campaigning on it. What a load of crap, dude. And we all know that if the roles were reversed and the shoes were on the other foot, this wouldn't even be an issue. They would be praising Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris visits the family at Arlington Cemetery. What great leadership skills Kamala Harris has. It's so predictable. Anyways, she's right. Christy Shamblin is right. Instead of trying to create a narrative on how to destroy Donald Trump, maybe they should be talking about why wasn't anybody held accountable. And the biggest question of all is why wasn't Joe Biden or Kamala Harris there at that ceremony, with or without Donald Trump? I think we all know the answer why. You heard her. She said, we invited the Kamala campaign. We invited Joe Biden. We invited both of them. And she was ignored. They reached out to Donald Trump, and he said, absolutely. That should tell you everything you need to know about the people we're dealing with, man. It's so sick. It's so typical, man. Anyway, so here's a video of Tom Cotton going to town on Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. Here, check this out.
Bottom line, though, I guess, Senator, is it ever appropriate to make campaign content at military grave sites?
He didn't take campaign photos there. These families, Gold Star families, whose children died because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's incompetence, invited him to the cemetery. And they asked him to take those photos because, as they told me yesterday, when I spoke to Kelly Barnett and Darren Hoover, the parents of Taylor Hoover, who has Arkansas ties, they don't get to go to the beach on Labor Day. They don't get to have barbecues. This is their one chance to have a memory of their children, to commemorate their service and to honor their sacrifice. They wanted President Trump there. They wanted to take those photos. You know who the families also invited? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Where were they?
Boom.
Joe Biden was sitting at a beach. Kamala Harris was sitting at her mansion in Washington, D.C. She was 4 miles away. 10 minutes. She could have gone to the cemetery and honored the sacrifice of those young men and women. But she hasn't. She never has spoken to them or taken a meeting with them.
Well, they did meet with them during the dignified transfer.
Because of
they were with them at the dignified transfer.
Her and Joe Biden's incompetence, that those 13 Americans were killed in Afghanistan.
What a bootlicking scumbag Kristen Welker is. They met at the dignified ceremony? You mean the ceremony where Joe Biden checked his watch? You mean that right there? Yeah, there was Joe Biden checking his watch at the dignified ceremony. And if you notice in the picture, you notice somebody that's not there? That's right, Kamala Harris. That's because Kamala Harris didn't show up. So Kristen Welker is a bootlicking scumbag trying to constantly bail water for Democrats, whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. We no longer have a free press. Our media is nothing but an arm of the administrative state. It is nothing but an arm of the Democratic Party. And you know the sad thing about this picture, very, very famous picture. Why? Joe Biden checking his watch as the 13 flag-draped coffins were being rolled off the back of a plane. And you want to know how many times Joe Biden checked his watch? 13 times. Isn't that something? Absolutely unbelievable. And for the leftists out there, before you go on and say, oh, no, he didn't. He absolutely did not do that. Really? Well, how about this? So here is a Snopes fact check. U.S. President Biden checked his watch multiple times during the dignified transfer of fallen soldiers from Afghanistan. Oh, wow. What does that say? True. Videos and photographs show U.S. President Joe Biden checking his watch at least twice during the dignified transfer of soldiers at Dover Air Force Base in August 2021. But we know from people that were actually there that watched him said that he checked his watch every single time a coffin rolled off of that plane. This is how disgraceful these people are. This is how disgusting they are. And this reason alone, like I said, should be exactly why these people deserve to be nowhere near the White House. Do people actually believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris care about the soldiers? Absolutely not. If you were to take Kamala Harris and you were to take Donald Trump, which one do you actually think cares about the military and our troops? I mean, these are the basic questions you can ask. Kamala Harris was 4 miles away. She was at her mansion in D.C. 10 minutes away from that ceremony that day. 10 minutes. And she was invited. I mean, it's so incredible. But these people have the gall to talk about Donald Trump releasing footage and posting footage on TikTok. Breaking the law? Maybe they should be asking the question, well, why wasn't Kamala Harris or Joe Biden there? And why wasn't Kamala Harris? She was 10 minutes away. Joe Biden was on a beach. That's right. Here was Joe Biden during that ceremony. Oh, what do you know? There's good old Lunch Bucket Joe talking on his phone on Rehoboth Beach with Dr. Jill Biden. These people, man. And you know what's crazy is some of the headlines that were released after this footage, because people are wondering, like, who the hell is running our country right now? So the media, of course, had to bail water once again for the Bidens. One last cover-up for the Joe Bidens, and they started releasing headlines saying, oh, Joe Biden dealing with diplomacy, even on the beach. I mean, it's so incredible, man. It is so, and I know you see it. You see it. It hurts my head sometimes with the complete ridiculousness of all of this, man. With all of it. So Tom Cotton's exactly right. Where was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Both of them were invited, and there was no reason why they couldn't show up that day. It's so disgusting, but yet we're supposed to be looking at Donald Trump as if Donald Trump's the bad guy. This is that opposite world we keep talking about on the show all the time, where the heroes are villains and the villains are heroes. It's like every day is April Fool's Day, man. It's so disgusting. So if you're wondering whether Donald Trump has spoke about this incident, I think you probably already know the answer to that. Of course he did. He responded in typical Trump fashion, and I have that post right here. He posted this to his platform, True Social. He said, I want to thank the families of our great warriors who have been lost, to us for the way they came together as one, and thanked me for attending, at their request, the celebration of their wonderful family members who, because of the incompetence of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, are no longer with us. Thank you for saying you wanted me to stand with you at the Arlington National Ceremony and take pictures, that it was your request, not mine, but it was my great honor to do so. I will never forget. Lightweight VP Kamala Harris tried turning it around because they weren't there, have never spoken to the families, and have no intention to do so. In Afghanistan, you don't take the soldiers out first, you take the soldiers out last. This would be military 101. The most basic, and the quote-unquote leaders of the disaster should be immediately fired. We have fools in the White House, and now they are trying to solve the hostage crisis in Israel. Guess how that's going to turn out? Then this guy, he's good. He's good. I mean, he said exactly what needed to be said. Almost exactly what we talked about today. Of course, people need to be fired for that. Of course, you don't pull out soldiers before the civilians. But because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's incompetence, he's exactly right. None of it would have happened if them two were not in office, period. Nobody in their right mind thinks Donald Trump would have handled this way. I mean, we know he wouldn't have, because there wasn't one single incident like this on Donald Trump's watch. Donald Trump's the first president in my lifetime who didn't start a new war while he was in office. And you want to know what the craziest thing is to me? This is what's crazy. Joe Biden did actually visit one of the surviving soldiers from his Afghanistan disaster. And I actually have a video of Tyler speaking with, I can't remember his name, doing an interview on a podcast. And this is what he had to say about his interaction when Joe Biden came to visit him in the hospital after the Afghanistan withdrawal. Here, check this out.
And she said, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "I have no idea who the president is." And she's like, "Sweetheart, it's like, it's Joe Biden." And this is just me talking about what happened, but I just leaned back and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God. And that's what I said. And the Secret Service dude just like beat red, like trying not to laugh. And I was like, and this dude, like 2 minutes later, he walks in with him and Jill Biden and their little entourage of people and like a photographer. And right away, like, remember him coming up to me, trying to shake my hand, like, try to shake my right hand. And I look at him, and I'm like, I don't have an arm. And my left arm is in this big ass cast with this giant orange foam block around it. I completely immobile. All I can do is move my head. My arm's gone. I'm like, I don't have an arm. And he says, oh, and like kind of stands up. And then like goes over to reach for my fingers because about an inch of my fingers are showing, and just like grabs my fingers. Doesn't greet me or anything. Just that's what happened. Just grab my fingers. And
I could totally see him doing that.
I was like, okay, that's weird. And you know, almost immediately starts talking like about how their son served in the military. Doesn't say anything about what happened. Starts talking about how their son served in the military.
So typical, man.
And my mom is just like, she's furious at this point. And they're like taking pictures and stuff. And she was like, my mom said this, she was like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care what you guys do. She's like, you better take care of him for the rest of his life. And like she said that. And I'm sitting there, and he comes over to me, and he leans over me. And I have a picture of this to prove it. I'll show you this picture that I have. It's a pretty funny picture. He leans over me, and he's like this close to my face, and he's like, what do you want? And I said,
what do you want?
Yeah, he said, what do you want? And I said, what? He said, what do you want? And I'm just like confused. I just got blown up and saw my friends die next to me. I'm like, I just want to be myself. And he's like, huh? And my mom's furious. And she's like, he said he just wants to be himself. He just wants to be him. He said he just wants to be me. And he goes, oh, okay. And they just continue to talk about everything but what just happened. And then they just ushered him out of the room. He didn't know what to say. They ushered him out of the room, and that was that.
Folks, I can totally see that happening. Exactly the way that he described it. Joe Biden being ushered in this huge entourage of handlers, completely just like a battered, incoherent fool. This mumbling, bumbling fool that he is, comes in, probably doesn't even really know why he's there because nobody told him. This is just part of his everyday routine. It was probably scheduled. He probably didn't even want to do it, to be honest. I mean, the guy, as of today, really has wanted to get as far away from his Afghanistan disaster as possible. So I could totally see him coming in, being the idiot that he is, try and shake the kid's hand when he doesn't have an arm. So clearly he wasn't paying attention, which would be typical for Joe Biden not to pay attention because the guy can't even find his way off a stage. And then when the kid says, I don't have an arm, he grabs his fingers and that's it? Doesn't say anything? Worse is he wants to start talking about his son's military service. Joe Biden has been doing this his entire career. The way that he talks, he uses the heart, he pulls on the heartstrings of people. This is a typical Joe Biden thing to do. To talk about his son's service, to make it sound like they know what it's like to lose a son in battle or to lose a son in Afghanistan. This is what they do. They do this all the time. He's been called out on this for a dozen times, at least, for doing this. Kind of like Tim Walz, how he kind of, exaggerates his service. Anyways, and then gets into his face and says, what do you want? When the mom says you better take care of him for the rest of his life, he gets in front of his face and says, what do you want? I mean, I have no reason to not believe this kid when he says this. I mean, you've seen the picture. They're there. I can totally see Joe Biden doing this. But this is how Joe Biden, this is the only record we have of Joe Biden visiting any of the soldiers from Afghanistan. Won't even say their names. Kamala Harris, forget about it. There's nothing. I tried looking for all this stuff. You can't find anything. There's no comments for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden about their disastrous withdrawal. No, nothing. In fact, what you do find whenever you Google this stuff, like Arlington Cemetery, Joe Biden, Section 60, is you find all this footage and photographs and videos from Section 60 in Arlington Cemetery. But I thought taking footage and pictures in Arlington Cemetery was illegal. Isn't that what they're trying to convince their viewers? Isn't that what CNN and MSNBC, isn't that the narrative they're trying to portray onto their viewers? Is that Donald Trump took pictures and footage inside of a portion of the cemetery that's sacred, right? That's what they keep saying. Donald Trump takes pictures on sacred ground and then uses it as a campaign commercial. That is the narrative that they are trying to push out there to people. This is exactly why our media is disgusting. This is exactly why our media should not be listened to. People should turn them off, and they are Pravda leftist media. They are nothing but an arm of the Democratic campaign machine. That is it. But that's how Joe Biden treats one of the surviving soldiers of his Afghanistan withdrawal, of his and Kamala Harris's Afghanistan withdrawal. What do you want? It's disgusting. And for the people out there, I know a lot of people are trying to, the name of the game right now for the media is to try and separate Kamala Harris from all of the responsibilities as vice president. They want to pretend, and this is no joke. They are actually trying to push out the narrative that Donald Trump is the incumbent right now and that Kamala Harris is some outsider that's, running for the presidency for the first time. And it's just insane how people believe this stuff. And so the reason why they do that is Kamala Harris, as we know from the Axios piece, was the last in the room when it came to the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle. So she bears some responsibility. And some people will say, yeah, but, Kamala Harris isn't really responsible for what happened in the Afghanistan withdrawal. But she is. As vice president, that's one of her roles. And so I actually looked this up. What is the role, what is the responsibility of a vice president? And this is what I found. So number one is obviously running for president after the second term. Presiding officer of the Senate, we all know that because Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote in a lot of these bills, these disastrous bills that passed the Senate, like the Inflation Reduction Act. That's right, Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote for the Inflation Reduction Act bill that actually increased inflation and pretty much caused all the prices that we see now. Yes, she's responsible for that, but you won't hear her say that. You will not hear the media talk about that. And then here's number three, advising the president. The vice president often acts as an advisor to the president, participating in cabinet meetings and other executive functions. So you have diplomacy and ceremonial duties. The vice president represents the United States at official events, both domestically and internationally, and may engage in diplomatic activities as directed by the president. I don't know, maybe like a ceremony at the Arlington Cemetery in Section 60 to honor the fallen heroes, the 13 soldiers that were killed in a debacle, in a withdrawal that should have never took place the way that it did. But it happened because of the incompetency of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That's why they didn't want to show up to that ceremony, because that disaster happened on their watch. That's why they don't talk about the names. They won't talk about what happened. They won't even go to the damn ceremony for the 13 soldiers that were killed over there. And then when you go down to number 5, the vice president often advocates for the administration's policies and initiatives, sometimes taking on specific issues of areas of focus. I don't know, like the border? What the borders are. That's right. That's right. Kamala Harris says the borders are. Those are her responsibilities as vice president. So not only was the Axios piece correct in stating that Kamala Harris pretty much was the last voice that could have told Joe Biden, no, don't withdraw the troops this way from Afghanistan. Don't go through with this. You should listen to your military advisors and don't change the date because you want a photo op for the anniversary of 9/11. She could have said all that. She could have rejected it. She could have sat down with Joe Biden and said, listen, sir, I have taken in the advice from the military advisors, and they're saying this probably isn't a good idea to change the date and to pull out the troops the way that you plan on pulling them out. So I'm going to have to go with the military advisors on this and side with them and say we do not withdraw from Afghanistan in this manner. She could have said that, but she didn't. So what happened? The Afghanistan debacle took place. And some people might say, oh yeah, but vice presidents, do they really have a say-so in, do they really have a say-so in matters like this? They actually do. In fact, Joe Biden should know best because Joe Biden was the one that said he advised Obama not to go through with the bin Laden raid. You remember that? That's right. There's article after article. Of course, we don't know if Joe Biden's telling the truth or is he lying because he's a typical fraudulent, a typical politician, a chameleon who will say and do anything to keep and retain power. So 1 minute, depending on whether it's beneficial for him to do so or not, he'll tell people, yeah, I was sitting down and made the final choice with Obama about whether to go through with the raid on bin Laden's compound. Or if it's not so advantageous for him to do so, he'll say, oh no, I had nothing to do. That was all Barack Obama. That was all Barack Obama. That's all his fault. Whatever happened in the bin Laden compound raid happened. I had nothing to do with it. So you see what I mean? Kamala Harris is the same way. She does the same stuff. In fact, all of them do. All the corrupt, phony politicians in Washington, D.C., the real city of sin, all do the same stuff. Will say and do anything to keep and retain power, to evade responsibility for actions or choices they may have taken, and this is no different. The reason why Kamala Harris or Joe Biden wasn't there during that ceremony is because they don't want to look responsible, like they are, for the Afghanistan disaster. Because they know that the Afghanistan withdrawal disaster was the ultimate outcome of their decisions, both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So there you go. So to the Christy Shamblin, I'm so glad that she came out and put a stop to this whole narrative that Donald Trump wasn't invited. That's what they were trying to do. They're trying to create this narrative like Donald Trump was running to the ceremony to try and get footage so that he can campaign on it. I mean, you see it all in social media. You see all these stupid memes by the Democrats and the Kamala campaign, Donald Trump putting MAGA flags on graves. These people, man, they have no shame. Like, every single time I think these people have hit the bottom, they surprise me every single time. They do. I'm like, there's no way they could do something this shameful. And they surprise me every single time. What they're doing with this whole Arlington Cemetery narrative is disgusting. And just like Christy Shamblin said, is that the real conversation should be, how are we going to handle another withdrawal from Afghanistan? And just like she said, there will be another one. And are we going to repeat the same mistakes? Because after all, nobody was fired after that disaster. I don't even think nobody was even cursed out. Not a word. Nobody was even scolded. In fact, you had, Kirby, go out there on the podium on national TV and say bragging about what a success it was. It was the most shocking thing I think I've seen out of the White House at that time. And then obviously we know as years went on, there was, my Lord, man, so much more disgraceful, disgusting stuff out of that administration. But for Kirby to come out and say that the Afghanistan withdrawal was a success, this is what these people do, man. They'll take something and they'll conduct in these mental gymnastics to try and justify their reasoning behind everything. And that's what they do. And all of it is based solely on their hate for Donald Trump. These people literally hate Donald Trump more than they hate their own suffering. That is how serious Trump derangement syndrome is. I think it's a real thing. In fact, I think it should be in the new mental disorder diagnosis book. What is it? The MDS-6 or DMS-6, whatever it's called. I absolutely agree that Trump derangement syndrome is a real mental disorder. And it has infected millions of people in this country. It is a very serious mental disorder. And I think it needs to be studied, because if we don't get to the bottom of this Trump derangement syndrome, I think this is the type of stuff that destroys civilizations. These people are willing to accept anything as long as it means hating Donald Trump. Whatever it is, this is that whole confirmation bias where, this is why they turn on CNN and MSNBC in the first place, because it makes them feel good. It's like they are terrified of hearing the truth. And CNN and MSNBC allow them to evade the truth, allow them to live in this alternate reality where truth doesn't matter, where men can give birth, and it's okay for men to compete against women in boxing. It's okay for a man, a biological man, to beat the absolute snot out of a woman in the boxing ring. This is where you go to confirm your emotions. This is where you go to feel good whenever you know you're supporting something that's not normal. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, the left-wing Pravda media is the place where abnormal people go to make themselves feel normal. Rachel Maddow, Joe and Mika, they will make them feel good. They will make them feel normal, even though it's not normal. So for all the talk about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance being weird, these people may be, they're above weird. We are in psychotic realm right now. Weird is like the understatement of the year for Democrats. When you think men can give birth, when a Supreme Court justice can't define what a woman is, when you have abortion vans sitting outside of your DNC, your political convention, abortion vans, a literal rolling death van sitting outside of your DNC to give free abortions and free vasectomies to DNC goers. Where you have in a crowd a giant inflatable IUD bouncing around the crowd like a beach ball at Woodstock. That's beyond weird. That is borderline evil. We are reaching evil levels in this country. Not weird, not abnormal, evil. Mobile abortion clinics? Folks, it's not right, man. Something's not right here. I don't know what it is, but something's not right. And I think it all stems from Trump derangement syndrome. I really do. I think all of this stems from people's hatred for Donald Trump. Because of their hatred, they're willing to ignore the unignorable. They're willing to accept the unacceptable. They become unreasonable. They become irrational, all because of their hatred for Donald Trump. And I blame 100% of this on our media. I absolutely do. This media that we have right now truly is the enemy of the people. There is not a doubt in my mind. At first, when Donald Trump first started calling out the media for being the enemy of the people, I'm like, whoa, man, that's pretty harsh. But now I see it. Now I see exactly what he's talking about. So once again, Donald Trump was right. Our media is the enemy of the people. They have become a arm of the administrative state. They have become a revolving door between media talking heads going into government and then members of our government going into media, like Jen Psaki, like Joe Scarborough. It doesn't get any worse. Our press, there's supposed to be a divide there. There's supposed to be some kind of divide between our media and our government, but there's not. It's almost undistinguishable, one from the other. Our press was supposed to be there for us. They're supposed to be on our side to push back against a tyrannical government. So when a government comes out and says, yes, we're going to mandate that everybody take a shot, and if you don't, then you may lose your job. For the people in the military, you're going to be removed. You're going to be forcefully kicked out with the dishonorable discharge, the media is supposed to be like, whoa, whoa. What do you mean? You're mandating the people to take shots? What kind of shot is this? Did they do that? No. No, in fact, it was the exact opposite. They scolded and berated anybody that didn't go with their narrative. They did the exact opposite. And all of it stems from Trump derangement syndrome. And like I said, I blame all of this 100% on the media. All of this insanity is the media's fault. Because instead of pushing back on all this craziness, they just accepted it and then amplified it. It's nuts. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. And again, the real question that needs to be asked is not whether Donald Trump broke the law by posting footage of his time with the grieving parents of those soldiers from the Afghanistan withdrawal. The real question is, why wasn't Kamala Harris or Joe Biden there? That's the question that needs to be asked. And that's exactly the question the media should be asking. Will they? I doubt it. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. If you guys want to support the show, please like, share, follow the show. At least share. You don't have to, the best thing that you can do for this show is to just share it. Get the word out there, because as you probably already guessed, the censorship is off the chain right now, which is exactly the next topic I want to get into with Elon Musk and this whole Brazil situation. It's crazy stuff happening. The censorship tyrants are on the loose, and they have the social media conglomerates in their sights. And so I wanted to talk about what's going on with Elon Musk and why people are calling for his arrest. Censorship's getting out of control. But this is exactly why you sharing the show helps. Like the show, smash the like button, but most of all, just share it. I don't ask for money. I don't ask for anything. The biggest thing people can do to help the show is just share it. Inform people, make informed decisions. And as you can probably see, this is the culmination of what happens when you have people making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision because they were misinformed. They were misinformed by the media that's supposed to be informing people, and they were misinformed by their own government. The biggest spreaders of misinformation. So share the show with your friends and family. I'd really appreciate that. If you want to get a hold of me directly, get a hold of me at steventorielloshow@gmail.com. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great weekend. God bless you. God bless America. And long live the Republic. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.